Don't you wish it were easy to trace the connection between content marketing and revenue? If you're a B2B marketing leader, you probably have had this moment. Leadership asks, what revenue did this content drive? And you begin to draw a blank. Or worse, try to answer the question with the marketing dashboard. That's where you fail, because content rarely shows up as a clean, direct line to revenue. So the conversation turns into friction, doubt, and budget pressure. And when that friction shows up, it doesn't just slow down marketing, the company loses trust in marketing. Plus, it slows down the entire revenue system. Sales gets less support, buyers get less clarity, and momentum dies in those gray areas. At the same time, the teams that win don't try to prove content ROI with a single metric. They clearly communicate to leadership how content influences revenue over time, and that impact is indirect. Because of this important step, they earn approval faster, and the content has time to compound into visible results. I'm about to show you a framework that explains how content influences revenue over time, reduces friction in approval conversations, and aligns expectations around cumulative impact, so you can keep building on the value of content without constantly defending your content marketing efforts. Keep watching and I'll give you a clear way to communicate the connection between content and sales so that your content initiatives don't get cut just before they start to work. The framework I'm going to show you is called the TRACE framework, which should be easy to remember because it is designed to help you trace the connection between content and revenue. Before I walk you through TRACE, you need to understand the larger operating model it belongs to. Because if you isolate TRACE as just reporting or just attribution, you'll miss its real power. TRACE works best when it's part of a system designed to make content cumulative, not episodic, where the goal is compounding influence and not just instant proof. And once you see the full system, the TRACE framework will make complete sense because it's built for the reality that content impact is most often indirect. That's not a flaw, it's just how content marketing works. And because you're making content for a business and revenue is the goal, it's important to know this. Expectations must match how influence actually works. So it's important to remember that content gets funded when leaders understand how it influences revenue over time. So now let me explain to you the overarching model for connecting content to revenue. This model is called REVCO. REVCO stands for Revenue Content Operations. It's a model my agency Content Master developed for building, operating, and scaling content as a revenue supporting system through cumulative content impact. Because most marketing teams create content in cycles. They get a green light to create, they fuel the output, and then that output gets tucked away to gather dust. REVCO builds content as an infrastructure, content that can be defended, reused, and applied in real revenue conversations. So REVCO is the overarching operating model that connects content to revenue support. And TRACE is one of the 4 REVCO frameworks that aligns leadership expectations on how that content appears when it is reporting time. Okay, now let me show you the TRACE framework because it explains to your leadership how content influences revenue over time, why that influence can be indirect, and how to reduce friction in approval conversations by aligning expectations around the cumulative impact of your content. You see, TRACE gives executives a shared model for trusting the content investment. Trust the system. This is the TRACE framework. The T in TRACE is trust. Trust is the first job that content does. Trust means your content reduces perceived risk and increases buyer comfort with your expertise. When trust is missing, buyers hesitate, stall, or default to the safer option, which could be to do nothing, even if your product or service is better. Trust is why content works, even when you can't attribute it, because it's shaping comfort long before anyone fills out a form or talks to a salesperson. In summary, trust reduces perceived risk so buyers can feel safe moving forward. The R in the TRACE framework is reach. Now, reach isn't going viral. Reach means your content creates consistent visibility before and during the buying process. In B2B, buyers don't buy the day they discover you. They buy after repeated exposure while they evaluate. And consistency is what makes you feel familiar, and familiarity is what makes follow-up conversations easier. So reach builds familiarity through consistent visibility across the buyer's journey. Side note, speaking of reach, be sure to hit the subscribe button so that I can stay on your radar and can continue to help you improve your marketing. Go ahead. It's right there. Click it. Thanks. Now on to the A in trace, which is authority. Authority is the difference between being seen and being believed. And when your content conveys your expertise and experience, you show authority. Authority allows content to convey credibility through experience-based perspective and insight. This is where your buyers decide these people know what they're talking about. Authority makes the sales process stronger as well because credibility transfers into the deal when the market already respects your brand as an authority. That is to say, authority makes your expertise credible before sales ever speaks. This is one of the invisible connections between content and the sale, but it is powerful and must be understood. Quick story. When LinkedIn first opened up video on the platform, I became creative at making video content regularly. But not just any content designed specifically for my business's target audience. Silently, I was gathering fans and credibility around creating business video. And then the VP of marketing of a bank invited me in to talk about a video initiative they had. Now, I thought I was going in to give a sales pitch, but when I got there, there were 3 additional people in the conference room who just wanted to meet me because they were a fan of my videos. They saw me as an authority figure on the subject, and I didn't even have to sell them anything. The deal was already in my hands because of the authority my content had built around my experience. That demonstrated that I had already achieved trust, reach, and authority. So, next after T for trust, R for reach, and A for authority in the TRACE framework is C, confidence. Confidence is what accelerates decisions. Confidence means your content clarifies expectations and trade-offs so buyers can make decisions faster. Buyers don't stall because they dislike what you're offering. They stall because they're unsure what happens next, what it costs, what the risk is, and what they're choosing between. Confidence content removes ambiguity because ambiguity is a deal killer. Content that builds confidence speeds decisions by making expectations and trade-offs clear. Now, the final element of TRACE is E, enablement. Enablement is where TRACE connects directly to revenue execution. Enablement should be a part of your content planning from the beginning and checked on throughout the content operation. You should be asking the question, does it help my sales team? Enablement means your content supports sales execution by answering questions, countering objections, and reinforcing your positioning as deals are being worked on. This is what keeps deals moving when buyers go quiet. This is what supports follow-ups without pressure. And this is what reinforces the story when multiple stakeholders are on the buying committee and they all need alignment. Enablement is when your content is strategically designed to keep deals moving forward by supporting real sales conversations. That's TRACE. TRACE explains how content influences revenue over time and how to explain why content is impactful even when indirect. It exists to reduce friction in approval conversations and align expectations around cumulative impact. And it guides you to making sure that revenue can trace back to the content that influenced it. So when you zoom back out, REVCO is your operating model that ensures your content connects to revenue through cumulative impact. And TRACE is the component or the framework that ensures leadership understands how that influence works, so you can provide measurable impact instead of getting your program cut too early. Without TRACE, leadership expects instant attribution and loses confidence when the impact isn't direct. Inside of REVCO, TRACE can transform content from a random marketing activity into a compounding asset that executives can approve with clarity. TRACE makes your revenue content operations fundable by aligning expectations with how influence really works. Now you have it. TRACE is one of the 4 components of REVCO. So check out these other videos to learn about both the revenue content operations model and the other components of this model, which are sauce, voice, and ready. If you didn't already, please subscribe to the channel to continuously improve your marketing skills. See you on the next one.